It has been so long since I actually did some content. I think this is the part where I'm supposed to apologize, but honestly, I just can't really give a shit. I noticed my quality slipping on the last couple videos. You saw I was doing some Moto Gear ones. I still have a couple more pieces to review. I got to do it a lot better. And I just finished my summer semester, so I did all of Calc 1 or 2 or whatever it was in like 2 months. And I've had some other stuff going on, not really project stuff, but just kind of miscellany. And I've been trying to spend some quality time with Suspect before I get out of the house, so that's all been going on. So I wanted to continue the series I had last time of how I was raised. That seems to be something that's at least interesting enough for me to do. I could do knives and guns, and we have a couple that I may end up touching on, especially since we now have an ammo sponsor, which thanks for sending me all the hate mail on that. That was really fun to deal with. I don't get why everyone's mad. We get all kinds of, bitching ramblings about being sellouts whenever something like this happens. And people don't get that this isn't really a huge moneymaker for it. And go into Social Blade and look at those statistics and know that they're pretty much totally inaccurate. I would just cream my pants every second upon waking up if I knew that like 10K would be coming in, because that's insanely high. I think on there, the channel, at least the main channel, is slated as like what is it, 10? I want to say $10,000 or $11,000 or something. It says, yes, Nothing Fancy should be making about 300K in AdSense. Lies. Such lies. Never even close to that. So I know we talk about money a lot, but it is kind of a deciding factor in a lot of the stuff we do. I actually have been looking for jobs and applying at places and stuff, because this is not really my thing. This is kind of a fun one, and honestly I just do this to address some of the stuff that I like and to do it in the project and kind of go over some of the mail things, because I type them out a lot and I'll respond to the same questions. But this is just kind of a fun thing. So the ammo, everyone should really be jazzed about, because that allows us to shoot more. He doesn't like going out and shooting a gun that we've already done, because he just assumes people don't care. If you look at maybe the Tavor, the LWR M6, any of that, people just shouldn't care, at least in theory, because he's already done a review, he's issued the edict of what he thinks about it, so there's not really much more to do on it. Well, I wish that were true, and it's really fun to shoot. So it's nice to be able to kind of have this guilt-free ammo store, especially when it's tougher to find in the quantities that we need to go testing. And you've seen us cut down a lot. But now we can go out and do a day trip, we can ride out and, go blow stuff up for an hour, and it's not nearly as damaging as a normal day where we have to plan it out, and he has to get off work and get all this thing, all kinds of scheduling and money dumped into it for a review that may or may not be a hit. So this lets us do a lot of the more fun guns. We have some coming right now that I'm really excited about, just because they're weird. You know him, he's got a real flavor. He likes the stuff that he likes, and what he doesn't like, maybe the novelty guns, he won't really touch. So we have something coming, actually 2 different guns, that I'm pretty sure he's gonna hate, but if you wave the second kind of cool flag, I think he'll be pretty okay with it. So that's pretty cool. So this one, and I'm sure I'm sweaty as I'll get out, this is going to be called Systems of Play. I know a lot of y'all are probably dads, because I've seen the demographics, and hello, once again, all 3 women who watch the channel. A lot of you spend money on yourselves, but maybe not your kids, and this is just a fun little walk through my childhood and what makes me tick, and especially how I was raised around things. Because now it's not really as normal to look at toys as maybe generations past have. The younger kids now are more into games, and it's almost weirder for me because all the young children I see now aren't even into gaming. They're into like shitty flash games on iPads and Android stuff. Like the lowest tier of games, and I'm sorry if you develop them or something, but I have yet to find really good games on any of the mobile device things that are interesting enough. I really wish there was a good real-time strategy for it, because that would give me wood, but there's nothing. And I have tried like the Command and Conquer thing. I don't know. I would love for something better to be on there. Just, for those like long train rides that you get really bored on. Anyways, so I'm not going to sit here and say that kids today are screwed up and they're all going to hell and the entire society is falling apart, because people have been saying that for millennia, all the stupid thing, and everyone who's ever been to an X-Temp debate class ends up quoting the Socrates one, and I would just quote the Offspring, but whatever, the kids are all right. It doesn't matter. But this is probably something that people overlook a lot, because kids aren't taught how to play anymore. It's not one of those things that is really ingrained in culture, and I laugh because you have shows like South Park that shows, you know, freaking Cartman and he's playing with stuffed animals and Clyde Frog, and that's a normal impulse in children. And I'm not going to pretend to cite studies, but I'm pretty sure it's a normal, innate thing for children to kind of imitate the things they see in the world. And I'm just going to throw it out there. I think boys are inherently more violent. You'll see some things like Playmobil. That's something that I had growing up, and I also had, I forgot to bring construction in. He used to get 1/72nd scale construction stuff for me because I loved it for a long time. And I would, you know, like dig out sand and do all this stuff. You don't necessarily need toys to be violent. And when you select them, there's a lot of criteria that you can really go in, but ultimately it's whatever your kid wants. You know, I used to really, because remember there's a 7-year age gap between my younger brother and I. When he was younger, I remember being like 10 or so, and I was just completely baffled when he wanted an easy bake mixer. He didn't want the oven, he wanted the mixer. And I didn't know why he couldn't just use a normal mixer, because he knew how, and I showed him, and it was still uninteresting to him. So I don't know, maybe it was advertising. Stuff like that. You're just going to have kids, they'll probably like dumb shit. I'll be honest. Most kids like stupid things. They're really brainwashed pretty easily by advertisements. Watch Saturday morning cartoons sometimes, and you'll be freaked out at how convincing they are. That's probably why I still eat Captain Crunch. So there are a lot of options and criteria to go with. For me, the kid has to like it. There are a lot of hobbies in this world, and you'll see a lot of parents push things on their kids. Whatever they love, they want their kids to love it. That's ideal. It's great if both of you are into something, because it gives you a common ground and it makes you both enthusiastic about it. It's really hard, especially as a parent, to pretend to be interested in whatever they're into, because I mean, I still can't. When I talk to kids, I am completely glazed over. I can't even begin to trail on and, you know, figure out what they're talking about because it's so uninteresting. But that's probably because I'm a young single guy and whatever. That's what we do. So when I was growing up, he made a very big deal out of, well, one, making me go outside all the time, and two, just making sure that I had a lot of freedom with constructing a universe. If you look at the people who are running franchises today, a lot of them come from places where they didn't really have franchises to grow up with. I've seen Pendleton Ward's interviews, and he mentions, you know, growing up and making his own stuff and doing cartoons and generating these things on his own in a vacuum, more or less. And I'm sure he was kind of a weird kid, but he's the guy that's now writing the book on the subject. And the thing I'm worried about with all these kids now, and I'm not, honestly, I don't care, but if I were a parent now, I would be sure to let my kid create their own versions of reality while they're playing. Because too often we put them into these franchises, we give them a paddle, we give them, you know, the iPad, and we say, okay, this is the game you're playing, this is the set of rules you're allowed to play in, this is the sandbox, you can't stray outside of this. And they spend all their time within that and this same narrative time after time, and they just get ingrained with these tropes and they never actually venture out of it, and they don't build that creativity. For me, I grew up with different things, you know, and you'll see all these are franchises. There aren't really any generic things. I mean, there's like 1/72nd scale military here and stuff. But I was taught to play, and I played with my dad a lot. I'd be growing up, and he would set up situations for me. So like G.I. Joe's, the 12-inch stuff, I played with all the time, and I have a huge collection. I actually have a video on that coming up, if there's interest in it. I filmed it once already, like 2 weeks ago, when it was 110 degrees, and I make no sense. It is just like, it's insane. I watched it in post, and it's the ramblings of an insane person, so don't even worry about it. It was like 110, and I was filming it in the attic, and I remember just like drenching sweat all over everything, and it was horrible. Anyway, so I'll have to reshoot that. But I would play these ones with him, and we would set up areas. We'd call them setups, and you would, you know, carve out niches of the house. So on the stairs, you could have a machine gun nest here, and we would set things up and have that, and then you'd have obstacles. And it would teach me from a young age about overcoming things and puzzles. You can say that about games, you can say it about, like, you know, team sports, any amount of things. And you're always going to have that. But to me, there's a special place for a freewheeling adventure where you have to decide how to overcome things. Not only are you responding to whatever puzzles in the game that you already have, you go, oh, wait a minute, I have to crouch, then jump over this one. We kind of lost that in a lot of games, too, if you compare them to old ones, like Metroid 2. Good luck ever finishing that. I never could. But instead, you kind of create your own thing, and it's this problem and solution vector that you may end up losing out if you don't do any of this. So it's not really tough. I think people overthink a lot of how to play with your kids. They think it's this intimidating thing. All you're doing is creating a world, and you're basically role-playing on a small scale. And all of these can be used in pretty much any way you want to. That's the cool part of it. Now, there is something to be said about going, and I've already kind of lambasted franchises for the same reason, about going with something that's maybe licensed. You know, I have Jurassic Park here, Terminator here, RoboCop, and then an A-10 and, you know, Dinosaur, and that's actually a Macross mech that they rebadged as Exo Squad later on in the 90s. When you have this engine of advertising that is useful in getting kids animated about it, because kids are tiny consumerist idiots, and it's helpful to have them be jazzed about whatever they see. So, you know, they can see an advertisement for Toy X and then, oh, cool, I want to do that and I want to watch the movie for it. And it gives them some ideas, and it almost gives them fuel for playing. So it kind of fuels their imagination for a bit, and then from there they can branch off and do it. You know, I'm a huge fan of Star Wars. At least I was the original trilogy growing up. I grew up, my freaking earliest memories are watching Empire Strikes Back, and we used to go rent it on VHS. And we would watch that over and over, at least I would, because I figured out how to work the VCR pretty early. So I'd watch that all the time, and I remember him, at least my dad, showing up at times with the old Kenner figures. So like these ones, I actually had a sizable collection starting out, and he would go and get them from, I think, his mom. He had, I don't know how, but he always ended up showing up with more. And this became one of the best things about my childhood, is we would hunt down the old Kenner stuff because they'd quit making it. This is prior to 95 when Kenner started up again, started making the weird bulky chest Luke and all that. These are like the cool, they're all kind of sitting there like totally bored. It's a really cool position and all that. But we spent so much time hunting these down, and the mythical old stuff like the B-Wing. This is one from '03. I remember there was a comic book shop that used to get all of the old ones, and they would hang them from the ceiling, and we would go in and just barter and haggle for whatever we could. You know, we'd get these figures for $1 or $2 a piece. They would just have an entire counter open with them, and we'd sit there. That was something that I loved. You know, and it was a reward for when I would do chores. Oh, cool, I'd get a little dollar figure, and I would add to my collection. And so much, just almost joy was received from spending all that time with my dad. We would find out, hey man, I saw this cartoon or a comic shop across town, let's go over. So we'd go over and we'd have like, you know, we'd grab lunch or a burger somewhere, and we'd just go hopping around town looking for stuff. We'd get home, I'd like throw it in the collection, I'd read the old Steve Sansweet catalog book thing and go, oh cool, it was released in '82, that's so cool. And so I was building this collection and getting this universe to create adventures in. So I would, you know, I wouldn't even recreate the stuff from the films, and I ended up, he did get mad at me for a while, because I played TIE Fighter on Macintosh. I guess that was a little later on. And he always got mad because I sympathized with the Empire, which doesn't say much about me as a person, more like the Imperials kind of had some cooler stuff for a while. Like I love the TIE Interceptor. That's an Action Fleet one right there. Galoob made those for a while. You have this environment where you can play, and you kind of have a construct of, okay, this set of people does this is the good guys, bad guys, and you can kind of generate your entire mythos around that. And I think it teaches kids a lot about character development and narrative building. If you ever spend time, if you ever want to pull your hair out, go into like any high school in a short story class and read some of the horrendous garbage that people turn out. It is horrible. Not saying I'm good at it, but just saying it shows you how shallow our wells run creatively when people can't bring out that much. If you look at, I mean, what's his name? Dan Harmon. He talks about his childhood and really writing, and you can say I like good or bad things about him. There are times when I've heard stuff, I'm like, that guy's a raging asshole. Other times he said like spot on cool things. I think he's just a person with all kinds of different motivations. So people like that, like he grew up in a fairly abusive household from what I gather. And he spent a lot of time escaping into just stories and writing, and so that was his thing, and that's why he has a whole system of writing and bringing characters full circle and doing realistic character development. And I think that played hand in his show not being canceled so early. Things like that, you really have to have experience and intelligence to get into that, and it's something you still lose out on. But you can make up for it with just an imagination. But if you're not exercising it regularly, you're really not going to develop much out of it. So I'm not going to say like avoid anything altogether. It's all about moderation. I didn't spend all my time inside collecting Star Wars figures. I didn't spend it all on the Super Nintendo. Although I will say, you know, my parents were fairly draconian with Super Nintendo. I would get it for about a weekend every 2 or 3 months if I was lucky. They had this really, they were kind of that 80s, like, oh no, Atari will rot your brain. generation, and they would, it would just show up and we'd play Bomberman for a couple days, and then it would, disappear again. And he'd be shoving me outside and telling me to go play around. And of course I had like the toy guns and like the little medic kits, and I would run around and play outside, and we'd have lightsaber battles and sword fights, and we'd blow stuff up. All of these are different aspects of a childhood. You can't just rely on one thing or another. You can't just go, okay, my kid's only going to play inside, he's only going to play outside, he's only going to play sports. I was on Little League and I did soccer for a while. We all have to kind of make sure that our kids aren't any one way. I think as a parent, your job is to make a person, not just make a surviving child. So you have to make sure you expose them to a lot of things and make them well-rounded and experienced and really open to life. Just personal, I don't really care if you apply it or not, because whatever. But the memories alone that you get out of all these are, to me at least, invaluable. I remember stuff like hunting around for this. I actually found this once because I'm kind of a snooper. I would look around and see if I could find the Christmas toys and all that. He had this stuck in a plastic bag that he jammed into one of the houseplants. This is one of the AT drivers from Empire Strikes Back. That was really cool. And so we'd spend all this time like hunting them down, and just, I can't even put it into words because it's an integral part of my childhood, of finding something and searching for it, and then just, I don't know, spending time with my dad along the way. That was really cool. And then it makes stuff like this when they re-released this one, because I think they wanted $60 for it when I was a kid at that comic shop, and we could never pony up for it. When it finally came around, it was such a watershed moment of like, dude, this is really cool. Things are, like, it's cool being able to get something that you dreamed about as a kid. And we're living in, like, the best toy era ever, because you can get anything from any franchise ever, and it has excellent quality. A part of all this, too, is the organization that comes with it. Because as a kid, I find that parents almost don't teach them anything about how to take care of things. If you look, kids will slam doors on cars, and they just beat on everything they own. Most of these are fairly intact for how old they are. I got this RoboCop toy when I was about 4 years old. This is a Terminator one from when I was like 3. Notice, not that he has any pieces to miss, but he's still totally intact. I was taught with all these to take care of them, and you don't like overstress them, you don't bash them into things. You take care of the things you're given if you're not paying for them. Once I got a paper route and I was out like buying my own stuff, they just told me I could do whatever I want with it. But it stayed with me. That habit of taking care of what I have is still with me to this day, except for some things like my bikes, I kind of wail on them because it depends. But you have to have this kind of organizational librarian bend to you if you start to really take care of things like that and you have a big old thing. Like if you look, these are my micro machines that I got. Since we spent a lot of time in the hospital when I was a kid, not really because of me, but we would hang out there for days on end. We started buying all the Star Wars micro machines that they made. And so this is like a fishing line, and I would turn it, but you can't really see much. I would start to organize all of them according to what's in there. So this is like, oh, those are the Hoth Rebels, those are the Pilot Rebels, then you have Stormtroopers over here, those are the Death Star Commanders, those are the Walkers, those are Rebel Starfighters, those are Imperial Starfighters, there's a shuttle, all these different things. And it teaches you, 1, how to keep track of things, 2, how to organize it, and 3, just how to remember how things go together. Because each one of these different things would come with its own set of accessories. And as a kid, it really bugged me when I would like mix and match scales. So you'd have like a 1/72 scale freaking M1 and then like a 1/62 T72. I was like, that doesn't look right together. And so you really get this almost obsessive thing of kind of keeping track of them. And to this day, if I bring out something like this, these are all the organized Star Wars weapons that I have. I can still pull out almost any one of these and tell you the figure it goes to, and more or less what year. I don't know how. It's one of those curses. Instead of using that space for math and thinking, I'm using it for shitty 90s toys, so got that going for me. But each one of these has some kind of awesome memory with it. The T-Rex from when I was 3 years old and we were living in Minot. This is the juvenile T-Rex from Jurassic Park. Totally awesome. He has like the battle damage thing. See? It comes right out. I can pull it out. It's like a battle-worn feature. So this little chunk of flesh, I can pretty much guarantee you everyone else has lost their little piece of flesh from their T-Rex. I have not. Probably because I'm so anal retentive. What else? An imposter alien from the Aliens franchise. I loved stuff like Aliens, RoboCop, Terminator. I told you already, I grew up on Terminator 2. Loved Jurassic Park. G.I. Joe stuff, all the 1/12 scale or 1/6 scale, I spent tons of time with, and I have like pictures of the machine gun nests and sniper things I'd put together. This we got in Minot when I was about 3 years old. I have this A10 would do bombing runs with me all the time. This is a more recent edition. I just kind of wanted to get a varied setup. That's from an Exo Squad lineup they released in the 90s. I loved cars. Playmobil stuff was big with me too. You have to keep in mind, my dad was still in the military for a lot of the time when I was growing up. So he would disappear for 6 months at a time. He'd come back from some weird place. So the Playmobil was a European addition to the whole thing. He came back and he's like, dude, check this out. So I have like the ambulance and the normal cars. And it was cool having a whole ecosystem of stuff where everyone wasn't trying to kill each other. It was just like normal living stuff. I think all that's healthy. Whatever your kid's into, whatever they're doing, it's awesome. What else? He did come back from Japan once upon a time, and that was back in '96, I want to say. And he brought back like little beta rip copies of 8th MS Team for Gundam. And that was before any of the weeaboo anime, like, you know, kids in high school making up their own Japanese nicknames bullshit came over here. So it didn't really have any stigma. It was just like, whoa, that's so cool. And I spent so much time rewatching the first 4 minutes of Patlabor, like over and over. No, it was Patlabor 2, the one where he has the spider robot. That scene was just mind-blowingly kick-ass to me as a kid. I would watch it over and over. Just play, rewind. The entire movie is a robot. That scene was just mind-blowingly kick-ass to me as a kid. I would watch it over and over. Just play, rewind. The entire movie itself was mind-numbingly boring to me, except for the like weird spider robot in the end, but that was still pretty bad compared to the beginning. The beginning was insane. So you would watch stuff like that little snippet, it's all 4 minutes long, and I had it on a pirated copy of the VHS from Tokyo, but I would play that over and over, and it would be so much fuel for my 172nd mecha adventures. You know, I had some of the mobile suit and action figures they made back then, and those would be into it. And I actually have the old Megaforce toys. I'm pretty sure no one's ever been like seen those. He got those at KB Toys when he was working there, and they clearanced them all. So I think he got like the entire collection for $10 or something. So I have like this entire thing of just tiny scale war machines. Now do giant battles with them, all kinds of cool stuff. Those are some of the micro machines. I did cars too. Still love them. I've always loved cars. I loved bikes as a kid too. I honestly didn't really think I'd be able to drive them much because they always told me I wouldn't. Growing up, they always said, we're a motorcycling family, we just don't have motorcycles. And I always thought that was dumb because I wanted one. Jurassic Park, of course, Suspect and I both just totally love it. Aliens vs. Predator. And I can pretty much tell you around the release date of most of these and what makes them special. Like this came with a comic back then, and it was the most photorealistic Predator they had ever made. This is Ripley and her power loader from the Aliens line, and I want to say about 94 or so. Love Aliens. James Cameron's. It's probably one of my favorite movies ever. Insanely cool. That's a Carnotaurus that they made for Jurassic Park. Fairly rare from what I gather. That was one he sent over just randomly from, I want to say, the East at some point. I just remember a large package showing up, and it had that and a Utah Raptor and a couple other Jurassic Park toys that I'd never seen stateside. And I got a real sense for what I had seen around here and what I hadn't. There's a little cloth caped Jawa, since I'm too poor to buy the vinyl caped one. But all these have a story to them, and that's why it's so much fun to kind of dig them up and check them out. And honestly, the investment alone in some toys is ludicrous. Some of the Gundam ones I got back in the day, the MSIA collection, I looked up just for fun a while back, like, oh, I wonder if you could ever get money for them. Not that I'd sell them, because they're an integral part of my childhood. And people are buying used ones for freaking $20 a pop. So if you were to buy a case of these, freaking what, $6 a piece back in '97, you'd be selling them, turning them for what, 20 maybe each one. As long as they're in package, you could probably get more. I mean, there is a very rare investment quality to some toys, and it's not consistent enough that you can really count on it. But some things do hold their value. You know, the original B-Wings have tanked since they came out with newer ones, but I don't really care. I've had so much fun with these ones. And I could show you my entire Star Wars collection that I've spent just years curating. And each one has a story. You know, some of these cars, like this one, this is a Mercury Cougar. I actually used to have a medical job, and I used to have this really kind of bad compulsive habit when I would get like depressed. You know, it's hard not to give away too much, but I would go in there and I'd find out that people I really liked had not really made it, so they would like die and stuff. And I would find out, and it would kind of put me in a funk, and it would just be, it was sad in a way. And even though I'm fairly detached from things, I'd always be like, yeah. And for some reason, I'd go and I would buy these little cars because, you know, you can just put dumb shit on your desk whenever you work somewhere like that. So I would just kind of add another car to my collection. So after a while, I had 5 or 6, I think. Yeah, it was kind of sad, but I don't know. It's a story. That's about it, man. I think that's everything I got here. For some reason, when I was digging through it, I have 4 of the original Kenner Emperor Palpatine, which I still can't figure out. I don't remember ever buying any of them. I think we just had them. Because who wouldn't want an army of monastic old men in robes? That's baffling to me. I can't imagine. Each one looks weirder than the last. This one's like missing a nose. They're pretty clean as far as paint goes. So I guess I got some extra Palpatines if y'all want to buy one. I'd put one up on the store just for fun. That'd be funny. That's it, man. Play with your kids. It's really not tough. You can make a situation like a common one is we'd always do G.I. Joes because they're big enough and they have, you know, large enough accessories. And he would always teach me about loadouts. He hated my ridiculous loadouts. I'd have a guy with a freaking M203 on his M16, then I'd give him a Barrett and he'd be shooting both at the same time running down the street. A grenade vest with like 40 on the front, Rambo style. He never liked that, but I still did it. You know, and guys would have like the Mark 40s and their machine gun nests, and just cool stuff. But that's where I learned a lot of the loadout stuff, and you know, he can't carry that much weight, you gotta lessen it, you gotta spread it out. And he was always really careful to make sure that I didn't just do a good guys save the day scenario. So we would always have more bad guys than good guys, and we would get like the little cheesy, they used to have like drugstore G.I. Joes. They were about $4, I think, for just like a generic guy, and he was super ripped like that and barely articulated. So you'd get a bunch of those, so you'd have bad guys to attack them and swarm them. There was something cool about that because then you have a smaller force taking on a bigger one, and kids are kind of inclined to always do the Captain America saves the day. You know, there's no peril, he'll never have to face uncertainty. When you play with them, you got to be sure to break them out of that. You got to give them a situation like, hey, they're going to have to sneak past this machine gun nest, and then if they're called in, they're going to have a helo coming on top of them, and so you got to stay really quiet, and we're going to see how we can do this. You could set up an entire trail through your house that the Joes have to cross, and you can set up like yarn and zip lines and all these different things for them to do. Really, the possibilities are totally endless, and you can do whatever you want in the entire ecosystem of your house. You can set up machine gun nests on top of big cabinets or under things or under the sofa. You can have this epic story contained all within your own walls on a rainy day. And that's something your kids will remember forever. Like, one of my prized memories is, you know, of course, I watched 8th MS Team, and I asked my dad to, like, play robots with me. So he gave me his, like, Desert Storm issued goggles that went on and sealed. And I got a helmet, like my bike helmet, and then I got, like, a wrap, and I got my water skiing life vest, so it wasn't the super puffy one. And we just beat the shit out of each other, and it was awesome. So we played fighting robots, and I was totally armored up with that, but we'd like just wail on each. It was just cool. It was just fist fighting and wrestling. It was awesome. And so, yeah, that's one of those cool memories that I'm sure at the time was just him wasting a Saturday. He spent all of like 3 hours just dicking around and pummeling his kid. To me, that's gold. That's going to be one of those things that I remember forever. So yeah, play with your kids, take care of them, and don't feel like you have to essentially do toys with them or something. I mean, like, if they like fishing, go fishing. I mean, personally, we've tried fishing before, and I absolutely hate fishing. But whatever they like, do it. Go be a parent. And if you're single, I don't know, spend all your money on cool stuff like mini fridges and whatever it is young people buy. Or if you're older and you don't have kids, good on you. It's good planning right there. Anyways, that's it for this one. That's Systems of Play. I may do G.I. Joes at some point just to show you some of the cool stuff I got going. Oh yeah, and check out this T-Rex. He's pretty much held together with silicone at this point. That's kind of sad. It's alright, Rex.